Some ghosts refuse to stay buried. Years ago, the man known only by his codename, the Reaper, the most feared sniper in U.S. military history, vanished without a trace. His real name? Nathaniel Rae, his legend, classified. His daughter, Addison Rae, was left behind with only a silver pendant and the stories her mother never dared to finish telling. Now, Addison steps off a yellow school bus in front of Grayborn Academy, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. The marble steps leading into the most elite school in the state reflect her worn-out sneakers and hesitant eyes. Grayborn is a place where legacies walk the halls, children of senators, CEOs, and old money families. Addison, she's a scholarship student, the only black girl in a sea of designer uniforms and generational privilege. As she walks toward the main entrance, the judgment in the air is almost tangible. Her grip tightens around the silver pendant around her neck, her late grandmother's, the one who once told her, "You are stronger than anyone who tries to silence you." Addison enters the front office. Behind a massive oak desk sits headmaster Raymond Carlisle, a sharp-eyed man whose voice is clipped and cold. "Welcome to Grayborn," he says flatly. "Miss Rae, I hope you'll rise to meet our standards." "I will, sir," Addison answers, her voice steady despite the tight knot in her stomach. Outside the office, a group of students waits. One boy steps forward with a smirk curling on his lips. "So this is the charity case?" he says loudly enough for everyone to hear. Blonde, arrogant, and glistening in custom tailoring, Brandon Kingsley is the son of Elliot Kingsley, the mayor of the city, and a man who controls half of Grayborn's political and economic strings. Brandon's icy blue eyes scan Addison like she's a trespasser. "Didn't know this place started a diversity quota." Laughter erupts around him, but Addison says nothing. She lifts her head and looks him square in the eye. Her silence speaks louder than their mockery. Brandon frowns, confused by her lack of reaction. The crowd thins as Addison walks past, not giving him what he wants, fear. But this is only the beginning. Because at Grayborn Academy, the war doesn't begin with fists. It starts with whispers, with power plays, and with invisible lines drawn by those who think they own the world. And what Brandon Kingsley doesn't know is that Addison Rae isn't alone. She's her father's daughter. And when the Reaper's blood runs through your veins, surrender isn't part of your vocabulary. The cafeteria at Grayborn Academy buzzed with noise, but as Addison Rae sat quietly in the farthest corner, a strange silence began to form around her. It was her second day, and she had already become a living reminder to the students of what didn't belong. She unpacked her simple lunch, peanut butter sandwich, an apple, and a water bottle. No catered meals, no silver cutlery, just reality. That's when the room fell unusually quiet. Brandon Kingsley strode into the cafeteria like a general entering a war room, flanked by his three closest allies: Spencer Blackwell, son of a federal judge; Tanner Whitmore, whose father ran the city's police department; and Liam Harrington, heir to a corporate empire. Their presence formed an invisible wall of influence and danger. Brandon stopped at Addison's table, his gaze sweeping over her lunch. "What's this, homemade?" he asked with a mocking smile. "The beef Wellington's on the menu today." Didn't feel like indulging. "Oh, wait," he added with a grin. "Maybe you can't afford it." Laughter followed like a weapon. Addison looked up, her expression unreadable, but her eyes were steady, unyielding. Brandon, annoyed by her silence again, suddenly slapped the lunchbox off the table. It crashed to the floor. The sandwich split open, the apple rolled under a nearby bench. "Lesson 1, scholarship girl," he said low and cold. "Watch your step in my school." No one moved. No one helped. It was as if the entire cafeteria had been frozen under the weight of Kingsley's name. Addison slowly knelt down to gather her lunch, her hands trembling. But she didn't cry. Not a single tear. Instead, her hands curled tighter around the silver pendant at her neck, her grandmother's voice echoing in her heart. "You are stronger than anyone who tries to bring you down." That's when a small voice broke through the heavy air. "Hey, need a hand?" Addison looked up to see a girl with curly, light brown hair and kind eyes crouching beside her. Madeline Carter, daughter of Grayborn's janitor. Invisible to most, but not to Addison. "Don't mind them," Madeline whispered. "Brandon thinks the world belongs to him. But he's just scared. Scared of what? Of anyone who doesn't bow. Addison's lips tightened into the faintest smile. Then I guess he picked the wrong girl. Across the cafeteria, Brandon watched the two girls with narrowed eyes. His fingers drummed against the polished table. Something about the quiet resistance in Addison Rae unnerved him more than screams ever could. He leaned into his friends, voice low and venomous. She wants to play games? Then let's see how long she lasts. The next morning, Addison Rae stood in front of her locker, her hands frozen in place. Someone, or rather, some people, had painted it overnight. Words in thick red letters bled down the metal. Get out. You don't belong here. Scholarship slave. The paint looked fresh. The message was anything but. Around her, students passed by, eyes flicking toward the scene, then quickly away. Even teachers averted their gazes. No one stopped. No one spoke. Addison stood motionless. Her lungs tightened, but still she didn't cry. She opened the locker carefully, took out her books, and shut the door again, as if nothing had happened. You need to report this, Madeline Carter said gently, appearing at her side. This is beyond bullying. To who? Addison replied, her voice hollow. The headmaster? He didn't even shake my hand properly on day one. Still, she tried. That afternoon, Addison sat across from Headmaster Raymond Carlisle in his cold, wood-paneled office. He didn't even pretend to care. Miss Rae, let's not exaggerate a harmless prank, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You'll find Grayborn has a culture of spirited competition. Addison's jaw clenched. He was dismissing her on purpose. Minutes after she left, Carlisle picked up his office phone and dialed a familiar number. Mayor Kingsley, he said in a low, polished voice. It's handled, as always. That evening, Addison walked into the small apartment she shared with her mother. The space smelled faintly of lavender and old books, but tonight there was something different in the air, something heavy. Her mother, Camille Rae, sat at the kitchen table, still wearing her hospital scrubs. Her hands trembled as she clutched a letter. They let me go, Camille said flatly. The hospital said it was budget cuts, but we both know that's not true. Addison sat beside her slowly. It's the Kingsleys. They're reaching beyond the school now. Camille didn't respond. She just stared at the floor. Then, almost without realizing, she muttered, I wish your father were here. Silence fell like a curtain. Addison's heart skipped. You never talk about him. Camille's lips parted, but she hesitated, torn between fear and guilt. There's a reason I never did. I think it's time I knew. Another long pause. Then Camille stood up, walked to the back closet, and unlocked a dusty wooden box. Inside, an envelope, yellowed, sealed. Addison took it with shaking fingers. Inside, a black and white photograph of a young soldier, eyes like steel, and a letter from the U.S. Department of Defense. She read aloud, voice trembling. Sergeant Nathaniel Rae, codenamed the Reaper, has been declared missing in action during a classified mission. He served with distinction in Special Forces, his operations highly confidential. His whereabouts remain unknown. The blood in Addison's veins turned cold. My father was the Reaper. Camille nodded slowly. I tried to protect you from that world, from the danger that comes with that name. Addison looked down at the photograph. The man in uniform stared back at her, expression unreadable. But behind his eyes was something haunting, something powerful. Camille didn't respond. She just stared at the floor. Then, almost without realizing, she muttered, I wish your father were here. Silence fell like a curtain. Addison's heart skipped. You never talk about him. Camille's lips parted, but she hesitated, torn between fear and guilt. There's a reason I never did. I think it's time I knew. Another long pause. Then Camille stood up, walked to the back closet, and unlocked a dusty wooden box. Inside, an envelope, yellowed, sealed. Addison took it with shaking fingers. Inside, a black and white photograph of a young soldier, eyes like steel, and a letter from the U.S. Department of Defense. She read aloud, voice trembling. Sergeant Nathaniel Rae, codename the Reaper, has been declared missing in action during a classified mission. He served with distinction in special forces, his operations highly confidential. His whereabouts remain unknown. The blood in Addison's veins turned cold. My father was the Reaper? Camille nodded slowly. I tried to protect you from that world, from the danger that comes with that name. Addison looked down at the photograph. The man in uniform stared back at her, expression unreadable. But behind his eyes was something haunting, something powerful. Do you think he's still alive? She whispered. Camille looked away. I don't know, but if he is, reaching out to him might change everything. And Addison didn't hesitate. Then maybe it's time to wake up the ghost the world forgot. That night, Addison sat alone at her desk, the photo of her father propped up beside her laptop. Her heart raced as she scoured the dark web, secret forums, and declassified military chatter for any mention of the Reaper. Most of it had been erased, scrubbed clean, but here and there fragments remained, enough to stitch together a faint outline. Nathaniel Rae, codename the Reaper, a ghost on the battlefield, the deadliest marksman in U.S. military history. No confirmed kills on record, because no one who saw him ever lived to tell the story. One video caught her eye. Shaky footage from a soldier's helmet cam, uploaded anonymously to an encrypted site. He moved like a shadow, the voice said. Silent, deadly. By the time you saw him, it was already over. They say death wears a cloak. I'm telling you, death wears his face. Addison's hands trembled. Suddenly her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She froze, then answered. Hello? A pause, then a voice, deep, calm, chilling. Addison Rae? Who is this? Someone who fought beside your father. If you've uncovered the truth, then it's time we talk. Her heart pounded. Is he alive? Some questions aren't for the phone. Meet me. 4 p.m. tomorrow, the cafe near Greybourne. Come alone. And Addison, don't tell anyone. The Kingsleys have eyes everywhere. The line went dead. The next day, Addison moved through school like she was sleepwalking. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt it. At 4:01 p.m., she stepped into Marlin's cafe, her eyes scanning every corner. A man sat at the back. Plain clothes, military posture, the kind of person who blends in while always watching. She walked over. You called me. He looked up slowly. His face was rough, weathered by war, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. My name is Declan Voss. I was on his team. We buried men side by side. We bled for each other. But Nathaniel, he wasn't just a soldier. He was the war. Addison swallowed. Is he dead? Declan studied her. No, not dead, just hidden. Because people like your father aren't allowed to live normal lives. Not after what they have seen. Not after what they have done. I need to find him, Addison said firmly. They're coming after us, the Kingsleys. They got my mom fired. They're trying to crush us. Declan leaned forward. Then it's time to call in a ghost. He handed her a slip of paper, a number, nothing more. He gave this to me years ago, said to use it only if Addison Rae ever needed him. Will he answer? If he doesn't, he's already dead. That night, in the silence of her small room, Addison stared at the number. Her fingers hovered above the keypad. One breath in, she dialed. It rang once, twice. Then, click. A cold voice answered. Who gave you this number? Addison's throat tightened. Dad, it's me, Addison. A long silence. She could hear the weight of it pressing through the line. Then he spoke. What's happening? Her voice cracked. They're hurting us. Me, Mom. The Kingsleys are trying to destroy us, and I don't know what else to do. Another pause. Then colder, commanding. Stay calm. Don't tell anyone else. Pretend everything is normal. I'll be there tomorrow. Wait, are you really Addison? He cut in, softer now. No one will ever hurt you again, not while I'm alive. The call ended, and for the first time in weeks, Addison Rae slept, not because the danger had passed, but because now the Reaper was on his way. The next morning at Greybourne Academy, everything looked normal. Too normal. Addison Rae walked through the hallway, her expression calm, but her mind on fire. She kept her head down, pretending just as her father told her. A few lockers down, Brandon Kingsley stood casually with his crew, smug as ever. He nudged Spencer Blackwell, whispering loud enough for Addison to hear. Looks like she finally knows her place. Spencer chuckled. Guess we broke her. But they hadn't. What they didn't know was that outside Grayborn's ivy-covered gates, Nathaniel Rae, the man known only in whispers as the Reaper, had returned. He stood beneath the shadow of an old elm tree, dressed in plain clothes, his presence blending into the background like mist. But his eyes, they were locked on Brandon Kingsley. Observe before you strike. Let them believe they are safe. Then take everything. He hadn't fought battles across oceans, hadn't ghosted into compounds and vanished without a trace, to lose here, not to some spoiled boy in a school hallway. That afternoon, Mayor Elliot Kingsley received an unmarked envelope on his office desk. Inside, photos, documents, evidence of illegal financial activity, bribery, and years of corruption tied to city construction deals. He paled. How? Before he could speak, his assistant rushed in, voice shaking. Sir, someone leaked your private holdings to the press. Kingsley's hands trembled. Find out who did this. But he already knew. Meanwhile, small things began happening around Brandon and his crew. Tanner Whitmore's social media was hacked. His cruel DMs and abusive posts leaked to the student body. Liam Harrington's father was suddenly under investigation for insider trading. Even Spencer Blackwell's old disciplinary records were anonymously sent to the Ivy League universities he'd applied to. Each day, a new pressure point broke loose. Panic set in. Their empire, once invisible and untouchable, was cracking from within. And Brandon Kingsley? He began to look over his shoulder more and more. One night, he came home to find his car door wide open. On the driver's seat, a single photograph. It was him, shoving Addison in the school hallway, caught in perfect frame. On the back, written in neat, cold handwriting. I see everything. Jar R. Brandon dropped the photo as if it were burning. His heart pounded. Rage boiled over his skin. He wasn't scared. He was furious. You think you can threaten me? He shouted into the dark. I own this town. But somewhere in that same darkness, unseen, a man waited. A man who had once survived entire battlefields alone. A man who knew that real justice didn't come from courtrooms. It came from shadows. Back at the Rae apartment, Addison stood by the window clutching her pendant. Is it really happening? She asked her mother, Camille. Camille nodded slowly. Your father, he always kept his promises. He's just not like the rest of us. Addison looked out at the night, where somewhere in the blackness her father was already moving, silently, relentlessly. For the first time, she didn't feel alone. For the first time, the Kingsleys weren't invincible. Because now the Reaper had come home. Brandon Kingsley couldn't sleep. For the first time in his life, the golden boy of Grayborn, the mayor's son, the untouchable, was afraid. Each night, more things happened. His phone buzzed with unknown numbers. Voicemails left blank except for the faint sound of breathing. Shadows outside his window that vanished when he looked twice. In the locker room, someone had scratched into the mirror. How does it feel, Brandon? Being prey? He punched the glass until it shattered. His friends started avoiding him. Even Mayor Elliot Kingsley began to pull back, his usual calm replaced by a tight, boiling frustration. Handle this, he barked, before it spreads. But Brandon couldn't, because this wasn't something he could bully, bribe, or bury. This was something else. Across town, Addison Rae sat across from her father in a small, quiet cafe that no one ever visited. He hadn't changed much. Older, sure, but those same cold, calculating eyes. The same silence that demanded respect. She didn't know whether to cry or stay still. Nathaniel Rae finally spoke. You've done well, Addison. You didn't break. I wanted to, she whispered. That's not weakness. That's what makes you strong. He slid a small flash drive across the table. Everything you need to end the Kingsleys is on there. Corruption, bribery, manipulation, even what they've done to your classmates. But we'll release it at the right time, when it hurts most. And if they come after us again, his gaze darkened, then I'll make sure they remember what fear really is. Meanwhile, Brandon tried to take back control. He confronted Addison in the hallway, his voice trembling with rage masked as arrogance. You think you're something now? Just because you have a few people feeling sorry for you? Addison stared at him, calm as stone. No, I think I'm something because I stood up. And you? You've always hidden behind your last name. Brandon lunged to grab her bag again, but this time, he wasn't fast enough. A teacher's voice cut through the hallway. Mr. Kingsley, my office, now! It was Ms. Calder, one of the few staff members who hadn't completely surrendered to the Kingsley's power. She'd seen enough, and she had proof because someone had sent her video footage from 3 different cameras. Anonymous sender. No name, just an attached signature. R. Later that evening, Addison found her father staring at a city map filled with red pins and circles. You're mapping their whole network? Nathaniel Rae nodded. I'm not just here to end Brandon. I'm here to collapse everything his father built. He pulled out a sealed envelope. This goes to the district attorney tomorrow. And this, he pointed to another folder, goes to the press right before the mayor's re-election rally. Addison blinked. You're not just fighting back. You're dismantling them. Exactly, he said, eyes hardening, because monsters like them don't deserve quiet endings. Across the city, Brandon sat in his room staring at his shattered reflection. He received one more message. This time, no photos, no threats, just one sentence. When you hunted her, you didn't expect someone was hunting you. Brandon dropped the phone, and for the first time, he whispered something he never imagined would pass his lips. Dad, we're losing. The sun had long set over Graybourne, casting deep shadows across the quiet streets. Inside the Rae apartment, Addison and Camille were clearing away dinner dishes when a loud bang echoed from outside. Then another. Addison's head snapped up. Her heart began to race. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Leave town tonight, or next time it won't be a warning. Addison's fingers tightened around the phone. Her mother, reading over her shoulder, turned pale. Addison, Camille whispered, we need to call the police. No, Addison said quietly, they won't help. They never do. She walked into her room, opened her desk drawer, and pulled out the envelope her father had given her, still sealed. A few seconds of hesitation. Then, she ripped it open. Inside, a burner phone, a small folded map, and one simple instruction. Call this number if they come for you, Uppo. She dialed. 3 rings. Then, Addison? They're here. They're making their move. Are you both safe? For now. Then do exactly what I say. 10 minutes later, the lights in the Rae apartment went off. Total darkness. Addison and Camille sat in silence, hidden behind the couch, breathing in sync, as their front door creaked. Footsteps. 2 shadows entered the apartment. Tall, armed, whispering. Just grab the files. Make it look like a break-in. What if they're still here? Then scare them. But what they didn't know was that another shadow had already entered the apartment. Silently, invisibly. A shadow who didn't whisper, a shadow who didn't warn. The first intruder turned a corner and vanished into the dark with a thud. The second froze. Ben! Ben, where'd you go? From behind, an arm wrapped around his throat. Precise, brutal, swift. The man crumpled to the floor before he could scream. When the lights flicked on, both attackers lay bound and unconscious. And standing in the middle of the room, calm as a winter storm, was Nathaniel Rae. He turned to his daughter. You okay? Addison nodded, eyes wide. How did you? Doors don't matter to ghosts. He turned to Camille next. She was speechless. I told you, he said softly. No one touches my family. That night, Nathaniel Rae didn't sleep. He worked. He uploaded files, pinged press outlets, encrypted messages to law enforcement contacts who owed him favors. Every move was surgical, decisive. And just before dawn, a small press site posted a story that would ignite the firestorm. Mayor Elliot Kingsley linked to illegal surveillance, police corruption, and private enforcer network. Attached were photographs, audio clips, transaction logs, all real, all damning. By the time the city woke up, it was too late. The Kingsley empire was bleeding. Back at Graybourne, Brandon entered the cafeteria to cold stares. Whispers followed him like ghosts. His friends no longer sat beside him. Teachers eyed him with suspicion. One student muttered as he passed, "Guess money can't cover everything." And at the far end of the room, Addison Rae sat quietly, a calm expression on her face. She didn't gloat. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Brandon clenched his jaw. He stormed out of the cafeteria. But what he didn't know was that this time, he was being followed. Brandon Kingsley sat alone in the back seat of a black town car, fists clenched, face pale with rage. His phone screen glowed in his hand, another headline. Kingsley scandal deepens. Anonymous source releases internal Grayborn surveillance footage. The footage? Him, cornering Addison in the hallway, shoving her, mocking her. It had gone viral overnight. He screamed, slamming his phone against the window. "It's her, that scholarship rat and whoever the hell she's working with. We're not losing to her." But deep down, Brandon already knew. This wasn't just Addison anymore. This was something bigger. Something watching from the dark. Something that had made him the hunted. That night, in a desperate move, Brandon returned to the one place he still had control, Grayborn Academy. The halls were empty, the silence thick. He wasn't alone. Addison Rae stood in the main atrium waiting. She turned as he approached, steps echoing like gunshots. "You should have left when you had the chance," he hissed. "And you should have thought twice before trying to destroy someone just because they didn't look like you." Brandon's eyes burned. "You think you've won?" Addison tilted her head. "I didn't have to win. You did all the work for me." He lunged, blind, reckless. But before he could touch her, a hand grabbed his wrist from behind, fast, iron strong, immovable. Brandon froze. Behind him stood Nathaniel Rae. "You wanted a fight, Brandon," he said calmly. "Here I am." Brandon stuttered, trying to break free, but Nathaniel held him in place with terrifying ease. "You think you're powerful because you wear your father's last name. But real power doesn't come from privilege. It comes from surviving, from protecting." He released Brandon, who stumbled back, breath ragged, pride shattered. Addison stepped closer. "You never scared me. You just reminded me what kind of world I will change." Brandon looked between them. His lips trembled, no words left, just silence. And for the first time, he backed away. Not with swagger, but with shame. The next day, Grayborn's student body awoke to the final blow. Every parent, teacher, and journalist in town received a file, titled simply, "The Kingsley Doctrine." Inside, years of financial manipulation, private threats made to town officials, leaked confessions from former enforcers, evidence of expulsion, bribes, fake grades, and political favors. It was the death knell. By noon, Mayor Kingsley was removed from office. By nightfall, Brandon was expelled, publicly. And the next morning on national news, Addison Rae was hailed as the girl who broke a dynasty. In the Rae apartment, Camille cried as she watched the headlines. Not from sadness, this time from release. Nathaniel stood at the window, arms folded, his eyes softer than ever. Addison walked over, leaned into his side. "Is it really over?" she asked. He hesitated. "For now, but the world doesn't run out of people like the Kingsleys. That's why people like us have to stay strong." "Then stay," she said quietly. Nathaniel looked at her. "You still need me?" Addison nodded. "Always." He smiled faintly. "Then I'm not going anywhere." Grayborn Academy never looked the same again. Gone were the whispers of privilege and fear. Gone was the invisible empire that had ruled the school's halls with money and threats. What remained was something different. Possibility. Addison Rae stood at the center of the grand auditorium, cap and gown flowing as the graduation ceremony began. The same stage where Brandon Kingsley once stood as the school's untouchable heir now belonged to her. The applause thundered when her name was called. Valedictorian Addison Rae. She stepped up to the podium, breathing in deeply. Her gaze swept over the crowd, her classmates, their families, the faculty, and at the back of the room, standing silently in the shadows, was her father. "I used to think being strong meant fighting alone," she began, "but real strength is choosing to rise when they try to keep you down, and knowing that even in silence, you're not alone. To anyone who's ever felt like they didn't belong, you do. And to those who tried to break me, thank you. Because of you, I learned exactly what I'm capable of. The crowd rose. Some cheered, some cried. And for the first time, Addison Rae didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like a leader. Later that day, in the quiet of their apartment, Camille placed a letter on the table. It was from Harvard University, a full scholarship, pre-law, Addison's dream. Nathaniel looked at the letter, then at his daughter. You did it, Addison smiled. We did. He nodded slowly, then turned to the door. You're ready now. It's time for me to go. Her smile faltered. Go where? Where I belong, in the shadows, watching, protecting, quietly. She stepped forward, grabbing his hand. Will I ever see you again? He squeezed her fingers gently. You won't have to. You'll know I'm there. And with that, he was gone, like a whisper on the wind, like a shadow returning home. Months later, on her first day at Harvard, Addison Rae stood in the courtyard, the morning sun warming her skin. In her hand, she held her grandmother's silver pendant. Around her neck, her student ID. In her heart, peace. She took a deep breath. I'm ready. Far away under a tree across the road, a tall man stood watching her, unseen. A quiet smile on his face. He turned and walked away. Because the Reaper had fought his last war, and the world he left behind was finally safe. Epilogue. They tried to bury her, but they didn't know. Addison Rae was a seed, and what bloomed in her place was unstoppable.